Welcome to Fed Renaissance. If you're a former federal employee trying to figure out what's next, start a new business, or looking to remake yourself, you're in the right place. There's no need to walk this road alone. So many former feds have already generated their own success, so why not learn from the paths they've already traveled? I'm your host and federal government alum, Brandon Cory. Fed Renaissance exists to help make you successful and to support your journey of personal and professional self-discovery. Former feds are a formidable force. Come join the movement. Hey folks, welcome to yet another edition of the Fed Renaissance podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Cory, and I'm delighted today to be joined by Zach Withers from the great state of New York. Zach, welcome to the Fed Renaissance podcast.
Thrilled to be here, Brandon.
Zach has a bit of time, like all of our guests, with the federal government. And Zach, if memory recalls, I think you had a bit of a stint on Capitol Hill that kind of got the ball rolling there. You want to maybe just dive in there and tell us how that got you started on your career path?
Sure thing. Well, stint on Federal Hill sounds a lot more impressive than it was. This was a college internship. I worked at a congressman's office, and like all congressional interns, my main job was handling constituent mail. And when I got there, they had piles of boxes of printed out emails of constituent mail. And my job was to take each one, enter it into a very sophisticated software program, attach an appropriate form response, and send it out. And I did this because I do my job, but it seemed like something maybe wasn't right with this. So I did something that apparently no one had done in many years, and I read the manual of this email handling software, custom made by, I believe, Northrop Grumman, because that's who you need doing this.
There you go. They do everything.
Yeah. And it turned out it was designed to automate pretty much everything they were doing here. The whole printing every email out thing didn't need to be happening. The keying back in every person's contact information didn't need to be happening. There were bulk features of all this stuff. So I just kind of took it upon myself to write up a proposed new workflow for how we could be getting back to constituents faster. And they looked at me like I was an alien. And then they said, "This sounds good. Why don't you try it?" And a week later, our response time for constituent emails had gone down from several months to about 24 hours. And they liked me.
Wow.
So what did this have to do with my later career path? Well, I did not become a professional congressional email handler, but I did put this on my resume, and a healthcare software company, this was back in 2006, found me on, I guess at the time, monster.com, and recruited me. I had no interest in either the healthcare or software fields, but they found me. And I ended up getting a job at Epic Systems, which their main business at the time was taking hospitals that had giant stacks full of patient records and converting those into electronic health records. So
Gotcha.
That was my first left turn. My second left turn was getting tired of yelling at my TV when I saw injustice being done. My mom was a lawyer. My mom still exists, but is no longer a lawyer. And one thing I was certain is I did not want to be a lawyer. Everyone kept telling me I was going to be a lawyer, but I'm like, this is not the path for me. So now I'm sitting here staring at my TV, shaking my fist and saying, I have to go be a lawyer, don't I? Oh, man. So
can we just clarify, what do you do now? What's your profession now?
So, the fine firm of Z.A. Withers, LLC is a law and consulting firm consisting of me. So
you're a lawyer.
I'm a lawyer. People.
Okay, so it happened.
People tell me I'm nice.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Good.
Yeah. So go to law school. Now I assume I'm going to be a big shot litigator. I am going to fight the good fight. I'm going to defeat the forces of evil. I'm in law school for 3 years. I'm very, very full of myself. I'm going to be God's gift to the legal profession. And I graduate from law school with no job because I did not do what I needed to do to acquire one. So, okay. Next left turn, I decide, well, I don't know what's going on. Let's move to New York City with new job. That seems like a good idea.
In New York is known for having no lawyers whatsoever. So
Correct.
I mean,
Yeah.
there's got to be just a great, ambiance there, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's an easy place to live with no income, and, jobs are ripe for the picking.
Right. There you go.
So, still can't find a legal job to start with, but I do find out that my software experience has suddenly turned into a goose that laid the golden egg. My ex-employer now rules the world, and there's a lot of consulting gigs available helping their clients. So that's my next left turn, is now I'm a consultant in healthcare IT, while also holding a valid New York law license. This leads to close to a decade of bouncing around doing stuff. I will fast forward, say I was in-house counsel with the New York City Health Department for a few years. I was briefly the director of strategic operations at the New Jersey Housing and Mortgage Finance Agency until I had a little girl on the way and realized that moving to New Jersey with a pregnant wife was really not a thing I wanted to put anybody through. So that was a unfortunately short-lived career. Did some basically small business legal aid for companies that were affected by COVID and had no income but still had to pay the rent. Excuse me. Worked with the ACLU for a while on civil rights litigation, the one time I actually did that. And ultimately, where this led me, the reason I am on this show, is to the digital service at CMS. CMS is the agency that runs Medicare, Medicaid, and the ACA exchanges. And they have a little unit called the digital service. Once upon a time, it was an offshoot from USDS, the US Digital Service.
Gotcha.
Now it's in-house at CMS.
Right.
And
CMS being, I think the C is centers, right?
Centers for Medicare
Medicare.
and Medicaid Services. Why is there
There you
only
go.
one M
Right.
in CMS? I don't know, but
Yeah. Good question.
yeah.
All right.
Um,
Things that make you go, hmm.
yeah. So, and the reason I get this job is because some dude tweeted about it back when tweeting was a
No
thing.
way.
Yeah, some dude said, "Hey, here's a thing that exists. If you want to help the country, maybe you should apply for a job there." Not like someone, was actually recruiting, just some dude mentioned it. So I
That's wild.
told,
And Twitter was big then,
yeah,
like as for government,
yeah.
like things have shifted a little bit, but yeah.
So I cold emailed them,
Okay.
and 5 months later, I was working there.
Wow. What do you know?
So that was, and I was hired via Schedule A, which is a
Okay.
term limited employment authority, not to exceed 4 years. It's why that was able
Okay.
to happen in 5 years and not. Ultimately, I had to apply through USA jobs, but it was still a very expedited process.
Right.
Anyway, that happened in 2023, early 2023. And then 2025 happened, and I was very prepared to work under the Trump administration. I'm a professional. Like, we have our jobs, we have our missions. The agencies all exist because the law tells them to exist. And, regardless of who's in charge, I'm a professional who's ready to do my job. But it became clear after not too many months that this was no longer the mission that was being asked, was no longer a mission that I chose to contribute to. And everyone has their own job that they were doing, their own calculus that they were running, like, full respect to the people who were still there. But for me, it was no longer a thing that was right. So that is the Renaissance part. I called around to some old clients from when I was consulting and when I was running this firm pre-federal experience, asked, "Hey, you still have any problems that need solving?" And when the answer for a couple of them was yes, I decided it was a better use of my time to help them directly than to continue struggling in Fedland. And that gets us to here.
So excellent synopsis. So you ended up at CMS. You were at CMS for a total of how long?
Just over 2 years.
So about 2 years, 23 to 25.
That's right. Yep.
And so you have this sort of pastiche background of So what state did you go to law school in? You don't have to tell us the school if you don't
No,
want
no,
to. But
William and Mary in Virginia. I went
oh,
there.
so it was Virginia.
Yeah,
It was the DC area.
yeah, I went there
Okay,
specifically because I wanted a federal job at a law school, which just didn't happen. But
fair
Mhm,
enough. Okay, so so DC area to New York, back to
mhm,
DC. A bit of a attorney legal work, a
mhm,
bit of tech work, software work.
mhm.
Uh, but and business process improvement. I mean,
Yeah.
by the way, like what's not to like about making, mailroom responses from our democratically elected representatives more efficient. I love that as a taxpayer. So on behalf of all of us taxpayers, thank you, Zach, for that. And I know any business would love that. So you're at CMS,
Mhm.
you're like, okay, this is not where I need to head. Um, but yeah, walk us through where a lot of our listeners are, is they may be at that precipice of, I don't know if it's time for me to
Yeah.
leave. I might be about to retire anyway, or I might be getting the axe. And at what point did you realize, I think it's safe to venture back out, and I think I can hang out my own shingle and make this work?
Yeah. So, my experience, I've spent a lot more time out of the federal government than in, and I've got some experience in state, local, and federal government now. Um, so my question wasn't so much, is it safe to leave? Because it's never safe. I mean, let's be clear about that. When you're running your own business, like stuff goes right, stuff goes wrong. And certainly I had the ability to get some clients lined up before I pulled the ripcord, which was a huge, that is a luxury. That is very different than a lot of businesses where you inherently are having to jump out and, just hope that it works.
Right.
Um, but one thing I will say to folks that are thinking about this is that if you're a federal employee and you're listening to this, everybody thinks you are hot stuff. I mean,
Hmm.
you might not understand that, but when you say, yes, I was in the federal government doing whatever, especially if it's a position of some responsibility, like whatever you're doing is probably bigger than whatever you will be doing on the outside. And people respect that. And people understand that if you got a job as a Fed, like they don't give those out in Cracker Jack boxes. So, first of all, people on the outside will automatically, not everybody, because you can't say anything about everybody, but people who know will take you seriously merely on the fact that you're coming out of the federal government. Then, strictly speaking to you, I will go back to whatever it is you're going to be doing on the outside is probably not as big and complex as what you are doing right now. Yes,
Hmm.
it's different, but Fedland is not in a different galaxy than the rest of the world. The Fed is a big organization. It is a big organization, just like other government entities are big organizations. And it is a big organization, just like big companies are big organizations. Things are different, but you don't need to suddenly pick up Swahili. It's, the same problems you've been dealing with are the problems you're going to need to deal with.
Well, I tell you, what I really appreciate about this,
Mhm.
and I want to get back to where you're headed on this, is just to underscore what you said, because I think a lot of the audience doesn't appreciate what you just said, and may not doesn't appreciate it, but doesn't recognize it. When you're sitting in Fed land, everybody around you is Fed. It's normal, particularly here in the DC area. But the recognition that, look, you had a gig with the federal government, you realized you figured out how to navigate a large bureaucracy, you figured out how to do this, you had a large portfolio of responsibility, that means something. And so that encouragement is something to really take to heart. So thank you, Zach, for pointing that out
Yeah.
as well.
And I will also say DC is its own very special place. I will say that if you're a federal employee in DC and you tell people you're a federal employee, people will probably be like, big whoop, because everybody's a federal employee in DC.
Yeah.
In New York City, there's a lot of fancy people there, but they will still, you say you're a Fed, they'll be like, oh, there's not a lot of them there. You go to
Hmm.
Idaho, there people are definitely like, you came from DC? Holy moly. Like you cannot, if you are judging yourself based on the way people look at you in the DC Metro, just do understand you're being viewed by a very unusual audience there that probably are the people who will give you the least credit for what you've been doing. So,
and maybe the implicit strategy there is, right? And this is difficult to articulate explicitly because it's uncomfortable. But if folks are struggling in remaking themselves, part of the lesson is maybe a geographical relocation could be very strategic, getting out of the DC area. And we haven't talked about that a lot on this show, and that's not easy, right? And I want to acknowledge that up front, particularly if you've got kids and family in the area. But based on what Zach is saying, you end up, outside of this area, your employment prospects could be a lot better. You've got to do your research on the economy locally and wherever you end up. But very fair point. So yeah, nicely said.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's a trade-off. People will know less what it is you were doing all day if you move yourself to Missouri, but they may be more impressed by it. This is absolutely a do your own research and figure out what's right for you thing. Just a point I wanted to bring up.
Yeah. So you did have a bit of a luxury as opposed to, not a build it and they will come. You're pretty sure that there's a market for the services you have to offer. So did you begin setting things up while you were still at CMS, or did you just kind of leave and like, okay, now I'm gonna build the thing?
Yeah, so I started setting things up while I was at CMS. And of course, there are rules around how you can do that as a federal employee. And, the discussions I was having were all above board. They had nothing whatsoever to do with any of the work that I was doing, any of the specific matters. There are conversations you can have, but you very much need to be clear of what your ethical responsibilities are. But that doesn't mean you cannot start thinking about what the next steps in your life are and having appropriate conversations.
And to underscore that one too, which we do mention on this show, please talk to your ethics counsel, right? Just let them know what you're planning on doing and do everything above board. And I do want to be on the record saying that because just having the conversation and helping them, they're going to walk you through it appropriately. So just have that conversation up front so you can get started on what you need to get started on. So sorry, Zach, that was so important. I wanted to get that too. So you're chatting with them and then you're starting to build it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had this LLC, the legal structure. This actually existed from before I was a Fed. It was dormant during my time as a federal employee. Although I should note, again, talk to your ethics counsel. There is no blanket prohibition to having an outside legal business entity that you own while you're a federal employee. So this is another thing that talk to your ethics counsel. You may be able to start your feet moving, doing some of this stuff while you're still a Fed so that you can start the real business right out of the gate.
Right. Just talk about it.
Yeah.
Put it out in the open. Yeah.
So yeah, that was what I did while I was still a Fed is I got the I informally discussed with people, if I'm back on the market, would you have work for me to do? What would it be? And then once I was out, I started, signing on the dotted line after a week or two of not waking up. Two solid weeks of nap after my way out of Fedland.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Totally appropriate.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that whatsoever. So after 2 weeks of Rip Van Winkle, are you flip on the light and you're ready to go, or were there some steps that you got to get in order before you can even start sending out invoices or accepting clients? I mean, the things that pop into mind are office space and web presence and marketing and insurance and yada yada. What did you have to get in order? Hopefully I'm not triggering a PTSD response there, but
not at all, because most of this stuff looks a lot harder than it is. So let's talk about the most obvious thing, which is somewhere to do the work. Like, clearly this is going to be much different depending on what the work is. What you're seeing behind me is my home office. If
Okay.
you're planning on starting a steel mill, then probably a spot in your home is not going to do so good for you. So, you need to understand what is the business you want to start. Is this a business that is going to be public facing? Is this a business that is going to be purely internal that you can do in a home office? And even if it's an internal business, like I don't generally have clients come here. Most of the work I'm doing is working remotely for a client. But if you're going to have clients who need to come and visit you, then you need space that's appropriate for that, even if most of the work you're going to be doing is just sitting there at a keyboard. And you can have multiple spaces. You can have a home office, but also rent space in an on-demand conference room, which exists everywhere,
Sure.
if you need to have client meetings. Or, there's various sorts of rental office space that are available, either a co-working setup or dedicated office space that exists all up and down the price spectrum. Like
So for you, you chose home
home
office. That works
office
for
works for
you.
me. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Commute is great. Coworkers are a little
Yes.
bit boring,
Yeah.
banana, derpy Dodger. But
Well, there you go.
yeah. So
Good
yeah,
to keep things interesting.
yeah. So there's that. Legal entity. Technically, you don't need to set up a legal entity. You can just say, "Hi, my name is Zach Withers, and I am doing business." That is a bad idea. It is a bad idea for the simple reason of legal liability. That if you are doing business straight up under your own name, then if something goes wrong, you can get sued for it. If you end up going into debt on the business, that debt is your debt and they can collect on you.
And to be clear,
Mhm.
either way, even with an LLC, you can still get sued.
Oh, yeah.
But and maybe you can fill in because I'm not the attorney. You
Mhm.
can still get sued, but how would you fill in that blank there?
So you can get sued, but you have some protections. Let me be very clear that if you're out there breaking the law, bad things will probably happen to you. So don't do that. But as if you're doing business as an LLC or a corporation, you forget me. I don't sign any paperwork as Zach Withers when I'm doing my business. What I sign is this contract is signed by ZA Withers LLC, signed by Zachary Withers, president, on behalf of the company. Just like
Great.
if I worked at Microsoft, I wouldn't be signing things. I would be reviewing Microsoft's contract, and someone at Microsoft would be signing it on behalf of Microsoft.
Sure.
So if ZA Withers LLC was working with a client and the client did not like the work that ZA Withers LLC was doing, they could sue ZA Withers LLC for breach of contract, but not me because I'm not doing business with them. ZA Withers LLC is. And ZA Withers
Right.
LLC has its own bank account, which you need to do. Like you need to treat your legal entity like it is its own person that you happen to be instructing, but it's the one that's doing the work.
Great.
And again, this talk to, if you're going to be doing any business, talk to a lawyer to make sure that you understand what it is you're getting yourself into. I should say, because you have to say this when you're a lawyer, nothing I am saying is legal advice. Please do not treat it as such. But this is my experience, the way I do things. I do business through this LLC, which has its own bank account.
Absolutely. And I really appreciate this brass tacks. I know our
Mhm.
listeners will too. Some folks are even wondering, well, does the LLC get its own EIN,
Mhm.
SSN? How does that work? Does it file its own taxes? Maybe even a little of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple, if you're going to form a legal entity, there's a couple of things you can do. And the big ones are a corporation, which can be either what's called a C corporation or an S corporation, or an LLC in various variations of it. And the big buckets are a corporation. You know what a corporation is. That's what's on the New York Stock Exchange. A corporation has shareholders. Shareholders appoint a board. The board appoints executives, and the executives run the company. And the corporation generally files its own taxes. Corporations have been around since merry old England. And that's what a C corporation is there's a lot of quote unquote corporate formalities. You need to have a board meeting, even if you are the entire board, which
Right.
incidentally you can do. You can have a C corporation, which has one shareholder, you appointing one board member, you who appoints the CEO, you which is all very silly, but it ultimately is what is necessary to get that insulation between me, Zach Withers, some guy, and the ZA Withers Corporation.
Okay, so that's a C corp. That's fairly well known. And then S corp, how is that different?
Yeah, so an S corporation, it's the same corporate form with a board and all that, but the taxes are simplified. A C corporation files its own taxes, and you as an individual do not include any of the corporation's finances on your personal taxes unless it's paying you a dividend. An S corporation, basically whatever income the corporation is making, it doesn't file its own taxes on that. You just claim that income as part of your personal taxes. So it's simplified on a tax standpoint. The last thing, and these have become very popular in recent years, are limited liability corporations. And these just didn't exist decades ago. It is a further simplification. The LLC is still a separate legal entity, but it doesn't go through as many corporate formalities as a C corporation does. Like I am the principal and the sole member of ZA Withers LLC. And that is all, the paperwork exists as to that, but I don't need to have like annual board meetings in order to keep things legitimate. It's just a more lightweight thing. So a lot of small businesses go down the LLC path now, but you'll need to look into those to see which one works the best for you. One other wrinkle I will throw in there is that Zia Withers LLC is entitled to practice law in the states of New York and New Jersey because I filed it as a professional services limited liability corporation, which if you are practicing a profession, usually there are additional hoops you need to go through to make sure that your legal entity is entitled to practice the same professions that you as an individual are. This is different in every state. So if you intend to practice any professional license thing, make sure you look that up and file appropriately. I actually had to reincorporate because I filled out the wrong checkbox the first time I did this. And I was a regular LLC instead of a professional LLC. So it was, a bunch of, don't waste the money I wasted.
Okay, so there's some paperwork you got to file for the LLC to show, how you do business, but then you've got stuff personally, internally. What did you have to create internally within your own office to be like, okay, here's how I'm going to market, here's how I'm going to onboard clients, that kind of stuff?
Sure.
Invoicing.
So
payment. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's, I'm going to start with onboarding and invoicing and everything you do with a client. If you have a professional business like mine, you're going to be working with clients under contract. If you have a coffee shop, obviously things are very different. But for a business like mine, if you're working with a client, you need to have a contract that not only people think about a contract like it's some magic lawyer thing, whatever, sign on the dotted line. Well, the main part of a contract, as far as I'm concerned, is not the legalities, which of course are very important, but the actual terms of what the business is. What am I going to do for you? How are we going to agree on whether I did it appropriately? How am I going to be compensated for that? And what are the procedures we're going to use for that compensation? The point of a contract, people treat contracts as a thing that you ignore unless you go to court. The point of a contract is to keep you from ever having to go to court. It's to make sure that before you start business, you've agreed on what the business is. So I would say that's very important, is number one, to understand what it is you are offering and make sure you've agreed to that with any client you're working with on paper, because I guarantee you, no matter how certain you are that you've come to an ironclad agreement, until you write it down, you and the client have different things in mind. It's just
human nature. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you are, one thing I would say in terms of all work you're doing, you shouldn't be doing anything that matters that is not in writing. So if you are billing by the hour, make sure you are keeping detailed timesheets. If you are billing by deliverables, make sure you are recording exactly what all these deliverables are, when you delivered them. Anything that needs to be signed off, make sure you get that sign off in writing. Anytime you come to an agreement with a client about how business is being done, if you're talking about anything on the phone and it matters, send a quick email afterwards saying, hey, great talking to you. My notes say that we just agreed on yada, 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 yada. Thank you very much. Just so that there is something in writing. And if they disagree, they can write an email back saying, yo, that's not what we said.
Right.
But if they don't send that back, then you've got good evidence this is what was said.
So in this digital age too, I'm curious, are you doing wet signatures, scanned signatures on your contracts? Or are you going digital? What tools are you using there?
Yeah. So there's no wet signatures unless someone requires it. And in general, there's no reason anybody should be requiring it. At least in the state of New York, digital signatures are perfectly legal. Talk to your lawyer if anyone says that they're not. But there still are people that, for whatever institutional reason, want a wet signature. Fine, I will print out a piece of paper and sign it if they really want that. Usually I find that whatever clients I'm dealing with have their own ways they want things done, and they're bigger than me, and I'm happy to just play along. But to the degree that I'm dealing with anybody who doesn't, it is nice to have something, if it's a formal document, have something that looks provable, and Adobe Acrobat is fine for that. It has functionality for true auditable e-signatures, as opposed to, there's nothing wrong with just putting a picture of your signature in a Word document. That is allowable. But if you want that extra layer of something or other, then having an auditable digital signature from a real tool is helpful.
Fair enough. Okay. And so you're using digital signatures at this point, contracts, you're getting contract templates presumably set up. Yep.
Yeah. Contract templates. And again, usually the clients I'm dealing with have their own templates that they want to use, which is fine, but I read them. And if there's anything in there that I can't agree to, then I'm going to say, we need to change this. If there's anything I don't understand, then I'm going to ask them, what does this mean? At the end of the day, the most important thing is that you trust your clients. Like, there's no contract in the world that can ironclad protect you against someone who wants to screw you. So don't do business with someone who you think might want to screw you, and make sure the contract is reasonable, not perfect. It should just be an agreement of what you're actually planning to do.
Yeah.
But yes, in terms of templates, if you need one, there are lots of templates available on the internet. And I would recommend there's reputable purveyors of templates that I would look at using rather than something you found on mybizcontract.biz. But beyond that, I don't have a lot of specifics to say.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so contracts, onboarding, what else is involved with onboarding, being able to accept payment, all that good stuff?
Yeah. So a lot of banks will actually have their own free invoicing tools. Like, my business banking is through Citizens. I have no endorsement relationship with them, but they've done fine for me. And they have a free invoicing tool. If you're using QuickBooks, which I did for a while, they also have an invoicing tool built into it. There's really nothing magical about an invoice. You can mock up an invoice in Word and send it out via email. An invoice is just, this is what I am billing for this period. I sent it on this date. You owe me this much. Here's when you owe it. Please send it to here. So use an invoicing tool. There's no good reason not to, because they're available for free, but don't think of invoices as something magical and mystical. And again, keep detailed records of when you are sending it out, because that probably is going to determine when it's due, how much it was, and reconcile whether what you got paid is what the invoice said they were supposed to pay you. Like, make sure you actually compare those two numbers to each other.
And so the actual payment itself, now you accept payment through pretty much any form, checks, probably not cash these days, but how are you doing that?
Yeah, so it is generally by electronic bank transfer. And this is, again, because the clients I deal with usually have their own way that they want to do things. It's become very common for people to have electronic payment platforms where you have to sign up via their portal in order to invoice them, which is a pain in the tuchus, but like you generally don't have a lot of room to negotiate on that one. So that's fairly industry standard. So I would say if you are a solo entrepreneur, have your own invoicing system in place, be prepared to use somebody else's, and whatever mechanism is being used, write down what happened in a place that you control.
There you go. There you go. So, I mean, so you're right at the point now of getting ready to start out on your own, and I'm curious in bridging the federal space here at CMS, and like you said, that really there is no guarantee when you go into business on your own. Just personality wise, I mean, are you a risk taker? Does somebody that's going out on their own, do they need to be? What if they are somewhat risk averse? Where do you fall on that continuum? And how much risk tolerance do you really need to have to go out on your own?
Yeah, I would say I'm a risk optimizer. I mean, I'm a lawyer, and risk management is a big part of what I do for my clients. And I would say there's a big difference between risk management and complete risk avoidance, because the most important thing to remember is that there is no such thing as complete risk avoidance. Someone once told me the only way to avoid all risk is never to do anything, which it turns out is not 100% true, because then you avoid all the risks of doing the thing, but you accept all the risks
Of doing
not
nothing.
doing the thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well said. Yeah.
Yeah. So there are a lot of ways to get yourself in trouble going out on your own. And you need to, every business is different. So you need to understand what it is you are getting yourself into and make a calculated decision whether those risks are worth it to you versus the risks you face by staying in your current role. And only you know what those risks are and how bad they're going to get, how fast. But there are things you can do to reduce your risks on the way out and increase your chances of success. All this paperwork stuff we started about, that reduces your risk. Having a legal entity in place, having appropriate financial controls in place, those reduce your downside risk. Having a solid business plan in place before you go, understanding what you're going to sell to who, how, and how that's going to make money, how much of it, understanding what expenses you're going to need before you start actually incurring expenses, those are going to reduce the risk of your suddenly finding yourself in a bad financial situation. To the degree that the risk may be this business is not good and not going to make any money, those are things that you may be able to figure out before you commit. This is not a question of I want to be an entrepreneur or I don't want to be an entrepreneur. There's no such thing as entrepreneur. There's just various businesses you could go into. And you might think of 6 of them that stink before you come up with a 7th one that suddenly you're like, oh, wait, it works this way. And you might not come up with that 7th one unless you'd gone through the first 6 that didn't make sense. That's how you're going to figure out what does make sense. So like put that all that pre-launch brainstorming is invaluable.
Right.
Even if any given avenue doesn't go anywhere, just go about it systematically so that if what you learn is, I don't want to do this, you know why, and you can apply those learnings towards your next idea. I do that until you're ready to go.
I love that point, because there, at some level, the iteration has to happen just as part of the process. I mean, I'll be honest, even in this, this podcast, I'm like, look, I know it's a thing that feds are leaving, they're starting their own thing. Let's dive into it. Let's unpeel the layers of the onion. But I'm learning. I've learned a ton on this podcast, and you've got to figure it out. And I still don't know if this podcast is going to work. If you're listening, I hope you're liking it. But it's fascinating to dive into these stories. And I should have asked this question earlier, I'm inferring, and presumably the audience is too. I'm assuming your clients are healthcare technology focused, but I don't want to assume who are these clients that you ended up picking up.
Yeah, my large clients are actually they're healthcare and health insurance systems. And the work that I do is kind of I'm a Swiss Army knife at this point, is a more flattering way of saying extremely niche. I work kind of at the intersection of law, technology, business processes. Um, I basically work in highly regulated areas where things are not, either someone wants to do something new and ambitious and are not sure the right way to do it, or they have something that they are doing and it isn't working and they don't quite understand why. And I help do the deep dive into that, make sense of it, and help them understand what directions they can go in and what the risks and rewards of those directions might be. And so, I talked about risk optimizer. That's the thing. There is really no time that I'm ever going to tell anyone, do this and all your dreams will come true. There's risks to any path anybody might take, risks and expenses. But I can tell them, here's what you've told me you are trying to get at. Here are the obstacles that I see in your way. Here are the things you're going to have to talk to someone who actually understands this. Because I'm not a doctor, so I don't understand if this new operating suite you want to open is a good idea or not. But if you do these things, here's what might happen.
Sure.
And often it's the sense making that makes people have the courage to go forward with something that they wanted to do in the first place. That's really, and I will say that to folks who are listening to this podcast as well, sense making it's not just a line of business you can go into, it's a thing that will make you feel comfortable with whatever your decision is, whether to go forward with a business or stay in your current role or go find a different job somewhere else, is to think through all of this and understand what's really involved and what you want to do. And understanding is a thing you can start doing right now. There's no prohibition against that. Once you understand what your options are, one of them will fit your profile for risk and reward, and you'll be able to go forward with this saying, I don't know if it's going to work, but I know it's the right thing for me to do now.
And that's great, because what I hear you saying is your clients are turning to you to help understand a landscape of some sort. And again, for audience members, you have an understanding of multiple landscapes somewhere, somehow, whether it's in your even personal life, hobbies, interests, things like that. But in your federal career, and this is where I want to turn this back to another question to you, Zach, is frankly, and again, I appreciate very much your encouragement earlier to say, look, if you had a job with a federal, as a federal employee, that's not nothing. And there are also those individuals in the federal government that feel like, you know what, I was just a cog in a wheel. I was just somebody, pushing paper from point A to point B. I don't have a lot to offer. I was a product of the system, and so there's not a lot unique that I have to offer. I instinctively want to push back on that and suspect that they have an understanding of a landscape that they may undervalue. Can you speak to how your own federal experience helped you where you are now, and maybe speak to that person who has their own doubts?
Yeah, absolutely. I was not a regulator at CMS. I worked for the digital service. I helped build and optimize, but I still lived in the world of CMS. And now on the outside, I can look at a regulation. I can look at just whatever, binding letters are going out, and people are looking at this with their eyes glazed over, like, what does this federalese even mean? I can be like, all right, so based on this came out of this unit, right? Okay, they're trying to say this. That's what they're trying to say here. And suddenly it's like, oh, that makes sense. Simply having seen how any given sausage is made will make you very valuable at every restaurant that serves that sausage. And I am not telling you that the only thing you can go into is work that is directly related to what you were doing before. That is not at all what I'm saying. What you want to do may be something that really doesn't overlap with your previous federal work at all. But you have absolutely picked up things about how your agency works, but also how the area that you regulated or oversaw works, and how large organizations work in general. You've picked up a lot of things that are transferable, even if you have been living in a very niche space for a while. This is different for everybody. Don't take this as specific advice about doing anything in particular, but I would say one great piece of advice is talk to a trusted friend, confidant, someone who you trust to know stuff, and say, this is what I do all day. What parts of this might be useful in the outside world? Ask that to a few different people, because different perspectives will see different points of value in your experience. You're not going to see it on your own. You need someone else to point the obvious out to you. I certainly have on multiple occasions.
That's excellent advice, because you're so close to the forest when you're in the federal government. You can only see you can barely even see the trees. You're just kind of absorbed in it, and at the same time, to your point, you're simultaneously absorbing the DNA and the biological the organizational processes of that organization in a way that you're probably not realizing, unless, like Zach said, you go and ask a third party and say, look, what do you see in me that is transferable? Because it may not be, the understanding, I'm just going to pick a random agency here, the understanding the ins and outs of the postal service and how all of that works. Okay, that might not be your business, but understanding how business processes work and how customer interactions work, and logistics, for example, in that particular industry, probably a lot more transferable than you may be giving yourself credit for. So well said.
And I will say one other thing, which is, if you are in a place that is suffering dysfunction, whether it's longstanding or recent, that makes you, that hurts. I get it. I've been in dysfunctional places from time to time. Understand that you, if you're paying attention, are gaining very valuable lessons from that dysfunction. You have seen ways to do things, and you have seen ways not to do things, and you understand the difference, and you understand why. And that kind of hard-earned lesson that's a very expensive lesson, that if you understand what the lesson is, you can take that value with you. So you may be somewhere you hate right now for whatever reason. Make sure you get what you can get out of that experience, because there are lessons to be learned.
There absolutely are. And, we've all had difficult bosses or supervisors we've worked for, and I've heard it countless times. One way to figure out the sort of boss you want to be, even if you're your own boss at some point, is work for somebody you really don't enjoy working for. That'll teach you the kind of boss you want to be in the future. And there's a lot of good lessons there.
Amen.
So I'm kind of transitioning here, and if I missed anything, feel free to fill it in, because I'm kind of going on the assumption here. Look, you've got your processes, you've got your LLC, you got a place to work, you're kind of ready for business. You after your 2 weeks of nap, you step out of bed the next morning, shower, you're ready for work. What is the biggest thing that you remember hitting you like, oh wow, this is a whole new world, moving from this world of structure to the lack of structure? How did you adjust in those early days? What was sort of the cold water on the face? Wow, this is a new deal that took a while to adjust to.
It's a little different perhaps for me than a lot of listeners on here, because I have bounced around so much and I've had a lot of remote work in my background. And even the federal work I did was fully remote. But of course, the one thing, I got no benefits now. Thankfully, my wife does. The paycheck I get is not going to be the same paycheck every 2 weeks, it's going to be the paycheck that reflects whatever it is I did and was entitled to bill, and that the client got around to paying, which I've had times that, payment has been delayed by several months for, well, who cares what the reason was? It just was, and I don't have the money. It is absolutely a different way to be, and that means that you need to perhaps start making sure you have cushions for yourself that you didn't need to worry about so much as a Fed. I say this after the number of furloughs that have happened over the last years. So frankly, people are probably starting to plan for those things even within federal employment. There's less room to hide, I think, is what a lot of people say, is that if you don't succeed, where succeed is defined as whatever is necessary at least to get paid, you're not going to, even if it was somebody else's fault. And even if you succeeded enough to get paid, if you didn't succeed enough to make your client happy, then they are not going to keep you on. You do not have civil service protections against being fired by an unhappy client. So that's the downside of it, is that if things don't work out, you're going to feel it. The upside of it is that if things do work out, you're going to feel it. You can have more work you can do. You can move on to more valuable work that you can bill more for. You can bring on more clients. You can get the flexibility, once a client trusts you, to change up your hours and get things done on time that works for you. I mean, that is a primary reason why I currently am doing this work for myself, is I have a 3-year-old. And this is the part where, as a self-respecting business owner, I'm supposed to brag about my 80-hour weeks. No, I don't do 80-hour weeks because I have a 3-year-old, and I am not making the kind of money that I could if I was optimizing my life to make a bunch of money, because I'm optimizing my life to be able to prioritize my family while still running a successful business and doing the work that I want to do. Like, I am able, as a small business owner, to make those decisions for myself about the work I want to do and how I want to do it and how I fit that in with my life. And don't get me wrong, sometimes balancing all that means you got to do a lot of work when you don't want to be doing the work, because that's what the business needs. But if you reach success means being able to do what you want to do. And that is something that, as your own boss, it just is something you're not going to get elsewhere.
I love that, because I mean, honestly, one of the questions that I was pondering is the whole question of how you measure success. And I think it is important for every business to have its metrics, but one of them that you just mentioned is not a business metric. It's a family metric. It's a life quality metric. And the fact that your 3-year-old sees more of dad than she might otherwise if you were working an 80-hour week, that matters. And that itself is, quality time with dad is a metric. Minutes of quality time with dad is a metric, and that is a measure of success.
Number of times I am personally there for her to tell me, "Daddy, go away."
Fair enough. I saw,
in
the age of memes, I saw a meme yesterday of, I don't know, it was a mom who, had to turn down the music in the car because the kid wanted to tell him something. So mom turns down the music, and the kid's saying, and so what happened was like, and then so what, and it just keeps going. And I'm like, okay, that's a minute or two of, it was important to them. I paused my life, I paused my music, and I was there for them, and it matters.
Yeah.
It just does.
It does.
Good stuff. I'm just going to let that one sit there for a second. That's so good. All right. So you do have to get out on your own. You've got to put in the hours where you need to put in the hours. Talk about a little bit. This is a thorny topic because it really is a head scratcher for so many people. And please don't tune out if you're already like, oh, he's about to talk taxes. But like, is taxes, are taxes? I'm really good at conjugating these days. Is taxes a difficult thing for small business owners, or do we make a bigger deal out of it than we should?
So for me, it is not, in terms of complexity, not a huge thing. And I think that's because my business from a financial standpoint is relatively simple. I have office expenses, I have various IT expenses. But if I was operating a restaurant and I had to be counting how many napkins I'm buying, that would get really complex really quickly. If I had staff, things get in order of magnitude more complex when you're dealing with payroll. I don't have a payroll. I just have me, and I pay myself out of profits. So the actual paperwork, I had QuickBooks for a while, and I actually determined it wasn't doing me an awful lot of good. I actually track my expenses in
Okay.
a spreadsheet now. And the reason for that is just that it gives me, frankly, more flexibility to categorize things in ways that are meaningful to my business. And at the end of the year, when I'm filing my taxes, which I use TurboTax business for that, it's an easy the 30 seconds I save by having it pulled automatically in from QuickBooks instead of retyping it is not terribly meaningful to me. So, you do need to have a written record, but there's nothing magical, again, about using a commercial tool for it. Don't try to do your taxes by hand. I will tell you that much. You definitely need either an accountant
and is
or
it safe to say and that folks can use just a basic, off the shelf software program in general for most simple businesses? Or I mean, maybe this is a bit of a stretch. Maybe maybe I should ask it this way: do you have to get an accountant for a small business owner to file their taxes?
So a lot of people will tell you yes. I will tell on myself and say that I do not. And part of that is I am a lawyer and I find tax law fascinating, and I've actually read the freaking forms.
Okay,
I'm like,
all
so
right.
this is what you can do. So I would say you either need an accountant or you need to be willing to spend a lot of time and attention. Although I will say, once you know what you're doing, most of that ain't going to change that much, unless it does. So let the buyer beware, I suppose. But certainly, accountants do not have to be that expensive. Part of the reason I don't use one is, again, I find it helpful to be able to track the minutia of what is going on myself. It helps me understand my business better. And a lot of people would say that I am utterly insane and should not be trying to do that. So
somewhat
your mileage may
personality
vary.
driven too. I mean, I've been that way for years. I've loved having my minutia tracked and categorized and all that stuff. And others have said, whoa, dude, that's like a lot more horsepower than you need. But you need to stay on top of it. But I think, you can start out simply with a basic software program and see if it works, see if it's leaving a lot of gaps. And again, this is an area where you may need to iterate. What about liability and insurance, right? So you have an LLC that provides some protection, but as a business owner, do you need to go beyond that? How does small business insurance differ from whatever might protect you personally, for instance?
Yeah, so there's types of insurance that you're going to need for your business, regardless of legal form, that are just specific business insurance. General liability, if you're in a professional, I mean, whatever you're doing, you need general liability insurance, which does what it says on the tin. If someone
Sure.
slips and falls and breaks their head on your property, it covers it. Often you'll see what's called a business owner's policy. which is kind of that plus asset coverage rolled into it. So, if your property catches on fire, covers that as well. For most professional businesses, you're also going to need professional liability insurance, or errors and omissions insurance, it can be called, which covers something a little bit more obscure, which basically is you mess something up doing your work and your client sues you over it because they have suffered damages. That covers your attorney and any payout up to a certain amount from that lawsuit. All of this insurance, in addition to covering money that you owe, also will cover your attorney during those lawsuits. Read the contract before you sign anything to make sure that's actually what it does, but generally what it does. Literally, let me give you some law school for free. I took insurance law, and the first rule of insurance law is read the contract. Like, it will tell you what it does. But yeah, and one thing I will throw in, legal liability insurance stinks. It is very expensive. It is ludicrously expensive. And I am going to throw in my one product endorsement here. I get my my liability insurance through Biberk, Biberk. It's Berkshire Hathaway's small business subsidiary. And number one, it was by far the least expensive legal liability insurance I could find. And it also was the simplest to purchase. Getting business insurance is the Wild West. It's like it's 1962, and you got to go to a broker who like does magic stuff behind the scenes and like comes back to you a few times and then gives you a quote and says, here's what it is. Like, it's like I'm used to, getting my car insurance. You go online to a couple of things. All right, this one's $100. This one's $150. Oh, 87. Great, I'm going with that one. Business insurance is so esoteric, and Biberk was just like getting car insurance. You go there, you type in your stuff.
Interesting.
Here's your price.
Well, that's good to know. And so they're presumably nationwide, just easy enough.
As far as I'm aware.
Okay. No, I had not heard of them at all before this podcast. So that's good to know. So that's Biberk, Biberk, Berkshire Hathaway subsidiary. Interesting, fascinating. Well, in this journey, as you started, what are some of the biggest lessons that you feel like you've learned? What have been some of your biggest successes? And some of the hindsight's 2020, I wish I woulda, coulda, shoulda, some of those things.
Funny thing is, for a long time, I felt like running my own business here was some kind of like pause in my career. Like, I should be, going on working for a big something. And if I didn't have a fancy title at some business, I wasn't really living up to my potential. And it was funny. It was having starting a family and realizing that my federal career was not proceeding in the direction I hoped for, and having the opportunity to come back out here to this business where I can do good work, make good money, work with clients that I like and respect and want to succeed, and make my impact in helping them do so, with the flexibility to live my life the way I want to live it right now. Like, what was I looking for somewhere else? Like, this is perfect for me right now. And I don't know if it's going to be what I want to do forever, but like, you don't get extra points for having a fancy title somewhere. Just do the work you want to do. And if the best place to do that work is working for yourself, then fantastic. I will say, I just want to make sure I throw this in here somewhere. If I ever get a chance to work for the federal government again, I will take that in a heartbeat at the right time and place. Like, I really miss that. I'm not here to tell you like, yeah, get out of the federal government, go, work for yourself. It's working for me, but just there's a right time and a right place for everything. And I think working for yourself, while it can seem just like it may seem that federal work and private sector work are on different planets, it may seem that working for a company and working for yourself are in different galaxies. It's work. It's just work. Every kind of work comes with its own benefits and risks and expenses. And once you start putting everything on the same spreadsheet, you can do some one-to-one comparison. I will say that, maybe it's because the business that I have done, so much of it has been for people that I previously worked with, and I knew what they were looking for and they knew what I was capable of. A lot of it has gone down pretty well the way I expected it to. And, clients have, run out of money and had to let me go from time to time. I've left and come back with some. Projects have evolved, but I will actually say, contra to what a lot of entrepreneurs will say, there have not been any giant gut punches in this, some of which is due to my own planning and some of which is due to good luck. But I don't think there's any reason to believe that working for yourself inherently means you're going to be on a gut-wrenching roller coaster at all times, especially if you have the opportunity to do your planning, figure out how it's going to work, and be confident that it is going to work. Lo and behold, sometimes things do work.
That is so encouraging. And to your point, I was in the federal government for more than a decade. It is a bit of a shock to leave and be like, all right, who am I now and what am I doing? And these questions of identity. But as you're pointing out, your identity may also be father, mother, sister, husband, dad, mom. Like those are big deals too. And if doing your own thing helps you step into more of those identities, those titles, although fewer in letters, perhaps, are just as big in other ways. So lots of encouragement on that front, and appreciate you pointing that out, Zach. I'm curious as we begin to wrap up here, because I want to give you an opportunity to just shout out too, and I know you're in a niche industry at some level, but if there are organizations, folks out there looking for a certain flavor of legal advice, what are the sorts of entities that would need to be, well advised to reach out to you?
Certainly. So, one thing is I'm happy to talk to anyone who's listening here who's interested in any of this. withersllc.com is my website. But if anyone wants to, is interested in the kind of work that I do and thinks I might be able to help them, this would be, first of all, healthcare systems. But also I've worked with government entities a lot. I've worked with the City of New York Health Department, previously worked for them. Now they're a client from time to time. If you're trying to do something new, is where I really do my best work. I helped City of New York, for example, when they were my client, set up a process for reimbursing healthcare providers, to counsel patients about COVID vaccines during the height of the pandemic. They weren't sure how that could be done, and I helped them figure out a legal avenue to do so that CMS ended up implementing nationwide as an allowable thing. So that is kind of what I do, is find creative solutions to real problems. And it's not just healthcare entities. I'm helping a guy who's got a software product that he's working on in the legal tech field. He's trying to figure out, how can I productize this? What would that mean? Helping him brainstorm through that. So, I would say really it's those things where you're worried. A lawyer's going to tell you this isn't a legal question. Go talk to a business guy. A business person's going to tell you this isn't a business question. You need to bring in your lawyer. I can help you split that down the middle and just figure out what are you trying to do here, and what avenues might work to do it.
That's fascinating. So an intersection of several industries, and you can find Zach Withers at withersllc.com. Zach, what have we missed? Is there anything else we need to hit here that was like, man, I was really hoping I could have said this or talked about this before we conclude?
No, I will just shout out to the audience again to say now is a real weird time to be a Fed. When I got that job, I was looking for my way in permanently, and didn't work out the way that I hoped. And I know that there were folks while I was still there saying this is all going to blow over in a minute. Well, it ain't blowing over in a minute, it seems like. And none of this is your fault. Like, the same things that are happening to everyone in America are happening to you. You are the ones who are having the rug pulled out from under your feet, and doing what you need to do good work to help this country in the way that you can. If you're not able to do it in the federal government, there's a lot of other places to do it. And that is not betraying what you went to. What America needs from you is to do your work in the place you can do it. So I'm looking forward to finding out what that is for all of you.
I couldn't have said it any better. So I'm going to leave it at that. Zach Withers, thank you so much for joining Fed Renaissance today. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Thank you for the wisdom you've shared, and we'll look forward to being in touch.
Absolutely, Brandon. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks for being with us today on Fed Renaissance. And remember, don't like or subscribe, at least not until you've checked out episode 2.